Welcome, everybody, to this Whole Life Action Hour. I am Ocean Robbins, your host. Thrilled to be here with you today as we explore together men's health. Now, whether you're a man or no men in your life, men make up about half the population. And there are unique elements to men's health. Now, some of what you'll learn today will, of course, apply to everybody. But we're going to be talking with Dr. Scott Stoll, a world-renowned lifestyle medicine expert, about plant-based nutrition and lifestyle choices that can boost longevity and enhance performance and promote vitality, with a particular focus on men. And we're going to be looking at how you can lower chronic disease risk and improve energy levels and optimize recovery at every stage of life. Now, this is a project of Whole Life Club, which is Food Revolution Network's ongoing membership community. And some of the questions that I'll be bringing to this interview come from our Whole Life Club members. Nothing you hear today is medical advice. We're sharing coaching and our own best insights, but of course, always consult with a qualified healthcare professional about your particular medical realities and needs. Now, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today, Scott Stoll, MD, co-founder of the Plantrition Project, the International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference, the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention, and with the Rodale Institute, the Regenerative Health Institute. Dr. Stoll is a member of the Google Food Lab and serves on the advisory board at Whole Foods for their healthcare clinics. He's also the author of several books, including Your Next Bite. Dr. Stoll hosted the 2018 PBS special Food as Medicine, and he's appeared in many documentaries, including Eating You Alive and The Game Changers, as well as in multiple Food Revolution summits. Fun fact, he was a member of the 1994 Olympic bobsled team. Scott, welcome.
Thank you, Ocean. I am just really delighted to be here with you today and with this amazing community that you've created.
Well, thank you. So great to be with you. Now, I want to start off by asking you, what are some of the myths you often hear about men's health and plant-based nutrition that you might like to debunk?
Yeah, I think there's some important myths, right? Probably at the top of the list, as we all know, the number one is you can't get enough protein from a plant-based diet. And the myth that, all of this protein can only come from animal products and that we need animal products to build big, strong bodies. That's probably myth number one. Number two that we'll tackle today, soy products and testosterone. That the consumption of soy products boosts estrogen in men, lowers testosterone, and eating soy feminizes men. That's a big one out there, right?
Yes.
I guess number three is that, you need to drink milk for a big, strong body. That's a myth that's been woven into our psyches by marketing and advertising. And we definitely want to hit on that one too. Big, strong bodies are built by plants, not by dairy, right? And many others. I think we want to talk about erectile dysfunction in men. It's very important, and it affects adolescents today, not just adult men. So we definitely want to touch on that. And I think that the myth that somehow there's a secret supplement or there's a testosterone replacement that kind of revitalizes men. In reality, it's lifestyle. And we definitely want to go into that and talk about that and help to eradicate those myths, demystify health.
Well, those are great topics for us to cover today. And let's start with protein. There's a lot of controversy about how much protein we need and how much protein is optimal. And of course, it may vary at different stages of life and depending on levels of physical activity. But, what do we need to know about protein?
Well, first, protein is important, right? The very name means of prime importance. Protein is important for synthesizing muscles, for the structures of the body, for skin, hair, and nails. I mean, it is essential that we do get enough protein. However, if you visit any hospital today, there is no protein deficiency unit in the hospital in the United States. We do not have protein deficiency problems in the United States. You certainly can become protein deficient, with inadequate intake of calories and with, in other countries where they don't have sources of protein they're consuming. However, protein consumption levels were really built on nitrogen balance studies. They measured the amount of nitrogen in versus the amount of nitrogen out and the amount of nitrogen that was retained in the system. And they created the protein recommendations, grams per kilogram of body weight, with a safety factor added to that of at least 30%. And so the numbers that we have, zero 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight for the average individual, and 1.2 to 1.4 for athletes, and perhaps people as they get older because of protein assimilation may need to be in the 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. But even that has a safety factor added to it, which says that if you're getting essentially 10 to 15% of your calories from whole foods that contain protein, you will have enough protein in your diet. In fact, most people today are eating more than 120 grams of protein in the United States, which is far too much protein. And there are problems associated with that, as you know. I mean, too much protein puts a load on the kidneys, can cause kidney damage. It strains the gut and challenges the microbiome, creating an unhealthy microbiome. Some of that protein, if especially from animal products, can be converted into inflammatory molecules like TMAO that circulate through the blood vessels and damage joints, kidneys, and heart. And the other problem with too much protein is it's an acid load in the body. And one of the ways that our body buffers acids is pulling calcium from the bones. That's a perfect buffer. So if you're eating too much calcium, too much protein, your body is pulling calcium out of your bones, buffering those acids, and you're urinating out calcium with an excessive load. In fact, they've done studies in Eskimos that eat very high animal product diets and found they had very early signs of osteoporosis, compression fractures in their lumbar spine, their vertebral bodies of their spine, because they were eating that high acid load from excessive protein. So that's an overview. And I'll pause there to see if you have anything before we go into some of the specifics of how much protein is actually in a plant-based diet.
Well, let's just do some quick math for a second here, because I sometimes like to look at numbers like how much protein is there in a food, and I'll look at, okay, if I got all of my calories, like 2,500 calories in a day from this food, how much protein would that equal? And you can kind of look at that with different foods and see how they mix and match, right? So if a food is 15% of calories from protein, and if you're getting 2,500 calories from it, now no one should just get all their calories from any one food. I don't care what the food is, but let's just play with this for a second. You'd be looking at 15% of 2,500 is 375, right? Calories from protein, right? So
right.
375, and there's 4 grams per calorie, right? Oh, wait, no. Yeah, that's right. So then suddenly, 4 calories per gram. Sorry. So anyway, help me think about the math here. 375 calories from protein equals how many grams of protein?
Yeah, you're at 92 grams of protein, right?
92 grams of protein. So if you were getting 15% of your calories from protein, you'd be well over probably what most people actually need, right?
Right. The average male needs, about 50 to 60, more if you're active, and the average woman in the range of 40 to 50. And so, yes, I mean, it's more than enough. There's interesting
more if you're active, and potentially more later in life.
Right.
Now, the challenges, the big challenges that come up here are if you're not eating enough calories, number one, right? Some people, their caloric consumption goes down, especially with age. And then that ratio could be a different, you might need a higher percentage from protein if your calorie consumption overall is lower. And number two, if you're eating empty calories, like there's no protein in bottled oil, there's no protein in most highly processed foods. There's very little protein in white flour. There's none in added sugars. So if you're getting calories from those things, they are throwing your balance off. So the key thing is whole foods, but you'll find that 10 to 15% of calories from protein is typical across the plant-based world. And then some foods like legumes are higher, and soybeans and tofu and tempeh and edamame, they're all much higher. So you kind of balance those things out, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, and so the good news for people is that a well-balanced whole food plant-based diet that includes legumes, beans, lentils, whole grains, tofu, soybeans is more than sufficient to meet all of your protein needs. And The other myth is that, plants are incomplete proteins. They don't have all of the essential amino acids, which has been proven false because the new research shows that the only plant actually that doesn't have all the essential amino acids is raspberries. Everything else has all the essential amino acids. And so if you're getting a wide variety of plants in your diet, you're getting all of the essential amino acids that you need to build a strong body and all the protein that you need. And the beautiful thing is you don't have to count it or think about it. It's just preparing delicious meals, utilizing a wide variety of beautiful whole plant ingredients.
Now, if you want to build muscle, do you need a little more protein in order to expand, not just to maintain, but to expand your muscles?
Well, what's interesting, as you're working out, we should be naturally increasing our calorie intake with our workouts. And, it follows if you look at most professional athletes or even bodybuilders, as they increase their calorie intake, their protein intake naturally goes up and they meet the higher levels of requirements simply by increasing the number of calories that they're consuming from whole plant foods. So if you're focused on increasing the calorie density of your diet as you're working out by adding in more beans and lentils, maybe some more nuts and seeds or nut butters, more vegetables, more whole grains, you're going to naturally get the protein that your body needs to build the muscle mass that you're looking to achieve.
Now, you mentioned soy earlier, soy being one of the top protein sources for plant-based eaters, because I think it's the most high protein legume, and legumes themselves are the most high protein plant-based food group. What about soy? Is it a healthy food, and is it feminizing? Do we have to worry about developing man boobs or having our sexual function damaged by excessive soy consumption? Well, how should men think about this?
Yeah, exactly. It was assumed long ago that because soy products had isoflavones and phytoestrogens, that they were similar to estrogen, and that if you ate too much of the soy products, you would be getting too much estrogen. And that's where this idea of feminization came from with soy products. And so certainly, many years ago, with the idea that you're consuming foods that have estrogen, many men pushed that away, but it was a false assumption. What they actually have found through the years, and this portrays both to men and women, they found that we have two estrogen receptors in our bodies, E1 and E2, and that the phytoestrogens actually bind to the E2 receptor, and that turns off the E1 receptor, which lowers the estrogen effect in the body. So essentially, you're protecting against the effects of too much estrogen by eating soy products. Thus, the reduction in cancer risks for both men and women. And what's interesting, there have been a number of large meta-analyses, one in 2021, where they looked at all the available studies in the consumption of soy products and testosterone levels, free, bound, and found there was no relationship to consumption at any level of soy products and reductions in testosterone levels. So the benefit for men consuming soy products is, like you said, there's 18 grams of protein per cup in soybeans and tofu. They have the protective effect of isoflavones and phytoestrogens, and they have no impact on lowering testosterone. So it's a really value add to someone's diet to add in more soybeans, edamame, tofu tempeh into their diets, because you get this beautiful source of protein that's protein rich, along with the protective aspect that lowers your risk of all the chronic diseases.
I know a number of people who are sensitive to soy. Is this a common allergen, or might they have hope for reducing their sensitivity with certain changes to how they use it?
Yeah, food sensitivities today can be multiple. Sometimes food sensitivities can be due to a disrupted microbiome. And as the microbiome gets healthier, food sensitivities can definitely decrease. So that's one. Number two, sometimes food sensitivities are actually related to exposures to pesticides and herbicides used on food. And soy products are one of the most heavily sprayed produce products that are available today. So it's not uncommon that some of the sensitivities may be to pesticides, herbicides, and environmental contaminants on those foods. So shifting to organic is one way to test that as well. And for some people that don't have significant anaphylactic reactions to products, adding small amounts in over time can help to mitigate and dissipate some of those exposures and allow people to add that in. So definitely shifting towards organic, working to heal the microbiome, and trying small amounts if it's not a significant allergy.
Thank you. You mentioned a little bit about erectile dysfunction. It's not something a lot of men like to talk about or think about or certainly experience, but it is quite widespread, and there's a whole spectrum here. Some people, it's like massively impactful on their lives. Other people, it's just not quite where they might like their function to be for optimal pleasure, vitality, and fulfilling sex life. So I'm just curious your thoughts on what are the primary drivers of this and how can diet and lifestyle help?
Oh, yeah, this is really important because it's linked to everything else. So, basically, the epicenter of erectile dysfunction are the blood vessels in the penis. And it is those blood vessels that dilate to allow blood to flow, which create the erection. And so when we're thinking about erectile dysfunction, we have to think more globally and system-wide when we think about the dysfunction that is contributing to erectile dysfunction. One study, in fact, found that erectile dysfunction precedes heart disease by 2 to 5 years. And more than 45% of men with significant heart disease had early erectile dysfunction as kind of the warning sign. So it is really significant, and it is linked to the blood vessels, and even more specifically, the single layer of cells that line the inside of all of our blood vessels, and we have 60,000 miles of blood vessels in our body. Those little cells are called endothelial cells, and they're very sensitive to exposures of food that we consume, and not just the components of the food, the fats, proteins, carbohydrates, but also toxins, phthalates, heavy metals, lead, mercury, etc. So environmental toxins also affect those endothelial cells. And so what's happening below the belt is also happening above the belt, heart, brain, and even the back into our discs. Those arteries that supply the discs can be damaged, and we can end up with degenerative disc disease, heart disease, depression, and Alzheimer's. The genesis of dementia is also the blood vessels, and erectile dysfunction. And then vascular insufficiency in the legs. It is a system-wide problem. So when we think about solutions, medicine wants to solve this by giving us a little pill, the blue pill to solve it, or the purple pill to solve it. And all that pill is doing is trying to force open blood vessels that really don't want to open up because the blood vessels are sometimes damaged, stiffened, and the little endothelial cells have been damaged. So, you're trying to force things open, and it may work, and it may not. So rather than just think about a reductionistic solution, we have to go back and ask the question, like, what's the root cause? Why is this happening to so many men? And the statistics are shocking that even 20% of adolescents and young men have erectile dysfunction. In the age group 21 to 40, it's 29 to 40% of men. And more than 52% of men today are struggling with erectile dysfunction. So it is, affecting almost 1 in 2 men. And as you mentioned at the outset, it has far-reaching impacts on relational, emotional wellness and health. So what's the root cause? The root cause is really anything that damages those little blood vessels. And we know from the research that it's basically, to summarize, it's the Western lifestyle and diet. And some things that people don't think about. Number one, sugar. A large study from Harvard found that sugar consumption on a regular basis can decrease testosterone production and impact endothelial function. Even testosterone production between 25 and 42% with regular consumption of sugar. So even people on a plant-based diet consuming sugar can damage this endothelium. Stress, the cortisol impacts that. So, high levels of stress impact both testosterone and endothelial function. Contaminants from the environment, as I mentioned, heavy metals, phthalates, microplastics damage that endothelium. Inactivity and poor sleep. Poor sleep is a driver of stress, and that will cause vasoconstriction. And so those are the root causes. It's the unhealthy Western diet. And, there are people even in our space that are vegan and even say plant-based, but they're not eating whole plants, they're eating processed plants. And that
Right.
diet too is called the unhealthy plant-based diet, can impact endothelium. So if that's the root cause, then we step over here to look for the root solution, which we can go through in some detail. It's whole plants, exercise, sleep, and sleep. And before I go into that, I'm just going to toss it back to you to add that in before we go through the solution.
Well, I mean, there's just so much here. And at the end of the day, it's like root cause is where we should focus because so often Western medicine just treats symptoms. And as we know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And the benefit of addressing root cause here is that you don't just get better, satisfaction and performance in the bedroom, but you also get a more fulfilling life with longer life expectancy and more energy and all the other benefits that come from having healthy circulation and blood flow in every cell of your body. So, we talk about this a lot at Food Revolution Network, and we could just maybe quickly cover that. What are the pillars of lifestyle medicine? What do people need to know if they want to optimize cardiovascular health?
Yeah, now we'll go through the pillars, and I want to talk about a few things specific to some plants that actually boost testosterone and can help this area too.
Okay, great.
So, the basic pillars that your audience knows well. First and foremost is the cornerstone of a whole food plant-based diet. There's no substitute for the power of a plate that is packed with plants 2 or 3 times a day. You can exercise, you can work on stress reduction. You have to have a plate that is packed with plants. It is the revitalizing tool that regenerates and renews your body. And it looks, the goal is a wide variety of plants, several cups of dark leafy greens, dark colored berries, beans, lentils, chickpeas, lots of fresh herbs, mushrooms, onions, garlic, a wide, beautiful pastel palette of plants on your plate every day. Make them delicious, find ways to weave those things in, find ways to add nutrient density to your calories, because that really is what makes the difference. Activity is important, and it's just finding more ways to move, and it can be done in little bits during the course of the day. The research all shows, 5 to 10 minutes, 3 or 4 times a day is just the same as a 30 or 40-minute exercise bout. So just weave in activity, things you love to do in as many ways as possible. Sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night between 11 and 6 is really important. And you cannot miss the regenerative window that happens between 12 and 3. That's essential for your body's cleanup, repair services, janitorial services to come in and repair and renew and fix the body. Finding ways and time to disconnect from the world and reconnect with your heart and yourself through mindfulness allows us to be more conscious, more compassionate, more caring, and to interact with the world in a very different way. And that can be done just simply by taking a few minutes in the morning with a cup of tea, over lunch, in the evening, just to sit and reconnect with all that's important and meaningful. And the last that I think is essential is community, which you all have done so well at Food Revolution Network. We were created to be connected in community, and community and connection to others transforms our lives in every single way, including microbiome. We share our microbiome with others, and when you're surrounded with people with a healthy microbiome, your microbiome changes. So from the inside out, we are transformed by the people that are around us.
I think I want to just emphasize this last point, particularly for speaking to men or people who know men in their lives, because I just want to acknowledge that, in our society, men have kind of been socialized to think of ourselves a bit like we should be Lone Rangers, we should be stoic, we should have the answers, we should know how to do it. There's this stereotype that men never ask for directions, even when they're lost. And I think that one of the things we're learning today is how important it is to have community, to have relationships. And sometimes that requires a certain amount of vulnerability. When vulnerability is met with love, that to me is part of what builds a fabric of relatedness and connection and trust between humans. And we all need that to feel a sense of belonging. And that's good for our health and our nervous systems, as well as our longevity and health outcomes. So I just think it's worth emphasizing this. And, I think that in general, like stereotypically, people who have been socialized as females are more rooted in relatedness and connection, and men not so much. We're more about doing and accomplishing and results and outcomes and success. And they're all important, right? I just wanted to emphasize that we need to be whole people. And one of the things we're learning with more and more research is that love and relatedness and connection really are important to health.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's a misconception, in kind of this hyper masculine concept of men that it's chewing on steaks, spitting, and and punching. That's not true. Like masculinity encompasses our whole being, as you said, and one of the most powerful forces that somebody can embrace is love.
Yeah.
Love fights for things that are important. Love goes to great lengths to create justice. I mean, love is powerful. Love is masculine. Love is feminine, and it is the most powerful force in the universe. And oftentimes, as men, we're hesitant to engage in that because we've been socialized that might be soft or feminine. But in reality, it's a very important part of who we are, and it's an essential part of community.
I want to circle back to one more piece about erectile dysfunction or sexual health for men. I'm curious if you have thoughts. There's a couple of supplements that some people have found help. L-arginine, which is a precursor to nitric oxide, French maritime pine bark extract, which helps bring down oxidative stress and promotes circulation, and especially is impactful in certain areas of the body that are related to sexual health. Do you think these can be helpful for some people as well as all the other lifestyle things we've been discussing?
Yeah, and I've always approached supplements as just that, supplemental to a healthy lifestyle. And one of the misconceptions that I think is so endemic in our society today is that kind of overarching paradigm that has been laid on top of our society by healthcare. And healthcare is, it's a pill for every ill, and the supplement industry picked that up, and now we have, similarly pills for ills. But we don't go back to the root cause, which we have to get the lifestyle correct. You may see a little benefit from some of the supplements, but you really need to start with lifestyle. There is good research for some of the supplements you mentioned. L-arginine also can boost growth hormone. Pine bark extract, shilajit is another one with good research to show it boosts testosterone and thus increased blood flow. But it's the essential part first of your diet and lifestyle. I mean, we eat between 1,500 and 2,000 pounds of food every year, which is a lot of food from the outside world passing through our bodies, being absorbed into our cells. And that's the most powerful force that we can use to optimize the health of our 60,000 miles of blood vessels inside of our body, because we're bathing those blood vessels 2 to 3 times a day, hopefully not much more, but 2 to 3 times a day with whatever we've put into our mouth. And the beautiful thing is when you're eating greens and berries and nuts and seeds and beans and lentils and ginger and turmeric and cinnamon and all these beautiful spices, all those little nutrients within 4 to 6 hours have found their way through your blood vessels and all the way down into your cells, and within 24 hours, all the way to your DNA. I mean, they're penetrating your body. So with every meal, we're bathing our endothelium with those foods. And it's been shown that when you eat this wide variety of beautiful foods, your endothelium is happy. It produces lots of nitric oxide, what you might take pine bark for, or these others. And it is L-arginine, it's boosting the nitric oxide and opening those blood vessels wide open. Beets are a tremendous producer of nitric oxide. Dark leafy greens, arugula, tremendous producer of nitric oxide. And you get all the other benefits of the anti-cancer phytochemicals. So making a great smoothie with dark greens and dark berries and pomegranate may be a more effective way than just supplements.
Fascinating. Thank you. Do vegan men have lower testosterone levels?
As they've looked at the studies, they have consistently found that, vegan men on a well-designed diet do not have reduced testosterone levels. Across the board in the population, men have low testosterone levels. We see it on the ads, especially this time of year with the football ads. It's very common if you're watching a football game to see the men talk about low T. And it's the assumption is that because you're getting older, you have lower testosterone. In fact, when I got certified in age medicine more than 20 years ago, that was kind of the mantra. As you get older, your hormone levels go down. It's just natural. And then I went back to my office and I started measuring testosterone levels, and I found 80-year-old men with normal testosterone levels and 30-year-old men with low testosterone levels. And I said, well, this can't be age-related. This has to be related to something else. And in fact, it is related to largely lifestyle. I'll just take a couple of minutes and then I'll pass it back to you and we can talk about this more in depth. But there are a number of things that really impact those testosterone levels. As I mentioned, sugar decreases it significantly, 25 to 40%. Stress can reduce it another 20 to 30%. Some medications that you would take for blood pressure, like beta blockers and others, can reduce your testosterone levels. Blood pressure can be resolved again with a whole food plant-based diet. Poor sleep can reduce it another 20%. Inactivity also, especially not strengthening your muscles, can reduce your testosterone. So we start to step back and kind of pull the curtains back, and we see it's more likely that it is lifestyle. The other interesting thing is that when we have fat on our body, our fat produces aromatase, which is an enzyme that converts testosterone into estrogen. And so more fat converts your testosterone into estrogen. And so, we know that 79% of people in our country are overweight or obese. There's another primary driver of low testosterone. So it's not age, it's probably our Western lifestyle. And in fact, when people start getting those things right, their testosterone can go up. And there's some specific foods we can talk about in a minute that really can help to overcome some of those challenges too.
What are those specific foods?
All right. So it's interesting. If we're looking at aromatase, there are foods that can help to block the effects of aromatase, which again is the one that converts testosterone to estrogen. And that would include cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts. That family, the indole-3 carbanols, actually go in and block the effect of the aromatase in that conversion. Button mushrooms and other mushrooms block that aromatase. Pomegranate and grapes can also block that as well. And they also serve as potent antioxidants. So it's you're not getting just the single effect, but the comprehensive effect of those foods as well.
Got it. Thank you. What about prostate cancer? That's another condition that's particular to men. How do diet and lifestyle impact risk levels? And for men who are dealing with prostate cancer now, can diet and lifestyle help?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, just kind of whole thinking, we go back to what was the root cause of prostate cancer. And cancer is essentially, at the core, it is a cell in your body that loses the natural regulation of birth cycle, active life, and death. And it's that switch, apoptosis, that turns the switch on the cell that causes the cell to die, be broken down, and then reprocessed into a new cell. And a cancer cell is when there's been some kind of damage to the DNA in the cell that flips the switch, that now the cell becomes immortal. And so it never dies. And when it reproduces itself, it produces cells that are immortal. And so you get this growing mass of immortal cells, which is a tumor. And when those cells then migrate out through a blood vessel to the other part of the body, they start growing, and that is a metastasis. And so there are several things that create this environment for cancer. It's first in the initiation of damage to the cell. Number two, our immune system is, it's part of its purpose is to survey cells and find cells that are out of order and to kill those cells, execute them, bring them back into alignment, use those parts. So an inadequate immune system is not surveying the cells and identifying cancer cells. The next step is the growth of blood vessels. If a cancer cell can trigger the blood vessels locally to grow into that massive cancer, it gets food in and a highway out to metastasize. And it's a system that is inflamed and unhealthy. And so there are a number of things that contribute to that. For specific to prostate cancer, when we're looking at the initial inciting event, it can be environmental toxins, pesticides, herbicides, tobacco, these environmental influences that can impact those cells. When we look at the immune system, it's an unhealthy lifestyle. 75% of the healthy immune system is related to the health of the microbiome, the bacteria that live in your gut. And that's directly related to the health of your lifestyle and specifically your diet, and specifically to the amount of fiber from whole plant foods that you're feeding your microbiome. When we look at the blood vessel growth, we were talking about those blood vessels earlier. The Angiogenesis Foundation did a large study looking at all of the foods that normalize angiogenesis, that would essentially prevent the growth of blood vessels into the cancer, as they have mentioned, starving cancer, and preventing the outlet of the cancer to spread to the rest of the body. That's angiogenesis. And they studied all of the foods, looking at foods that optimize angiogenesis, and they found that it's dark colored fruits and vegetables, spices, herbs that prevent that. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner for most of us prevents that blood vessel growth. And then inflammation. When you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, it's loaded with antioxidants, and that naturally reduces inflammation in the body. So the solution for prevention really is healthy plant-based diet, lowering stress levels. That also impacts your immune system, and angiogenesis, getting some activity, and being connected in community has a profound impact on your immune system. And so, that's the way that we prevent it. And then finally, I'll just conclude with people that are maybe currently facing prostate cancer. Obviously, continue to work with your physicians and make sure you're getting wise guidance from good oncologists and primary care physicians. Dr. Dean Ornish did studies looking at men with early stage prostate cancer over the course of 12 weeks with an intensive lifestyle intervention. And I just want to highlight that if you have a disease like prostate cancer, heart disease, any of those, you really have to fight with every bite. Moderation does not lead to significant changes or disease reversal. You do have to fight with every bite, every activity, and give your body every opportunity to heal. So Dr. Ornish used an intensive lifestyle intervention, the same 5 that we just talked about, including community, to address early stage prostate cancer. And they found that in 12 weeks, more than 70% of cancers were halted in their growth, which is really encouraging that in just 12 weeks' time, those cancers were halted. They also found, which was really remarkable, that in that same 12 weeks, more than 500 genes associated with cancer were positively impacted, turned on or turned off by that lifestyle intervention, really demonstrating that what people were doing with the lifestyle intervention affected their body all the way down to the epigenetic level, that level sitting above their DNA. So from the DNA all the way out to the blood vessels, the antioxidant systems, the microbiome, the immune system, the body was healing from the inside out in just 12 weeks. And so that's the encouragement that, whatever treatment you're pursuing for prostate cancer, there's significant added benefit, not only with primary prevention, but with intervening to assist your body in overcoming the prostate cancer. And importantly, once the prostate cancer is resolved, in preventing any cancer, whether it's prostate or some other cancer, from growing in your body, creating that anti-cancer environment inside of your body through your lifestyle.
I mean, this is just so profoundly important. And of course, the Ornish program included a low-fat vegan diet with soy. They also added in selenium. They used some fish oil, although of course many people are using algae-based omega-3s, EPA and DHA in particular. And they took some vitamin C and included the other elements that you mentioned. And the results were profound. PSA levels went down while in the control group they went up, and all the other things you mentioned. Diet and lifestyle are just hugely important. And I want to emphasize something you said yet again, which is there's a difference between reversal and prevention, which is that sometimes when you're trying to reverse, you need all hands on deck. And again, moderation isn't enough. So while a balanced diet and moving every step counts, moving in the right direction is true with most things. If you're dealing with a serious condition or a serious diagnosis, then you need to eat like your life depends on it, which it may, which means literally every bite you take has to be intentional and conscious if you want maximal chance of survival and recovery. And of course, again, this is not medical advice. Consult with a qualified healthcare professional about your journey and your needs, but we're sharing information and coaching, and it's some pretty profound results here. I'm curious also for your thoughts, Scott, on why it is that men tend to die sooner than women. About 5.5 years sooner on average. Like, what are your theories for what causes this discrepancy?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and there's probably several hypotheses, right? We don't actually have great data on that. We can say that, more men die of heart disease, et cetera. But, when we step back and look at it, one thing that I want to address, which I think is really important, is that men tend to be less engaged in healthcare. We put things off. We ignore things until things really break. We are not as preventatively minded as women. And men tend to carry an optimism bias. There's actually been research on this, where we think that things are better than they really are. In fact, when they've asked men about, do you eat a healthy diet, more than 80% of men say, yeah, I eat a healthy diet. And we know that is simply not true. But
So this is
I
one
think
place where optimism might not be good. You want facts, and then you also want to be optimistic about what you can do.
That's
Yeah.
right. It's like taking a piece of duct tape and putting it over the check engine light on our phone. It's not there. It's fine. I'm just going to keep driving
The
it.
average American, according to one survey, thinks their diet is a B minus, but that the average American's diet is a C minus. I just think that's fascinating. Like, we all think we're doing a little better than other people are, and then probably we are. So yeah, there's always room to keep moving up on the health outcomes, and I guess maybe more so with men.
Yeah, and we tell ourselves stories to make ourselves feel about it. And this is actually research that we create narratives in our mind about why we don't have to worry about it, or we build a story based upon somebody in our family. My Uncle Joe smoked cigarettes and drank alcohol and lived to 99, and that justifies our decisions today, even though the environment that we grew up in, our DNA, all of it, our epigenome, all of that is different than Uncle Joe, but we use that as a justification.
Yeah.
So I think first and most important for men maybe watching this is be honest with yourself. It's really important to be honest. Catching something early, you can fix it relatively easy. If you allow things to build over time, you get to a tipping point, and sometimes when things go over the tipping point, it can be disastrous.
Yeah.
And it's easier to change the brake pads before they start wearing down on the rotors, when you have to pull the rotors off because they've been grooved by the brake pads. It doubles the cost. The same thing for us. It's easier to just catch things earlier. And, it's part of just being wise with maintenance. Go and see a good whole food, plant-based nutrition, lifestyle medicine practitioner to get annual blood work, catch things early, do some scans, some preventative screening early. Take an honest look at your diet and your exercise in January and determine, how can I make it better? And one thing I like to encourage men along this way is that sometimes the idea of prevention is not very inspiring, but when we think about performance, it's a little more encouraging and inspiring. And in reality, we're all performing every single day in every way, no matter what. We're all athletes at some level. We use our bodies to go, to do. You and I are using our bodies to show up and be present. And so if all of us developed a little bit more of that kind of athletic performance mindset, and we looked at our lifestyle through the lens of how can I optimize my performance? How can I feel more vital and vibrant every day? How can I improve my recovery? How can I help my body heal? I think that helps us to be a little more proactive. Prevention is, it's hard to grab a hold of. It's hard to understand what that really means. And it doesn't seem to have any tangible benefits to today. But thinking about performance, strength, endurance, recovery, wellness, mental vitality, clarity, all those things involved in performance give us a little more proactive and maybe encouraging way to optimize our diet. So that's a really important lesson, I think, for men. And then finally, to that end, because men don't necessarily take care of themselves, more likely to be involved in risky behaviors, more likely to eat unhealthy diets. Men typically eat lower amounts of fruits and vegetables than women. We develop more of the chronic diseases than women do at earlier ages, which I think contributes to earlier deaths in those numbers.
Yeah, thank you. Any other things you want to share before we wrap up our time today about men's health?
I just would finish with, because I've become such a believer in community, that, I think it's really important for men to be connected in healthy communities. Healthy communities where ideas like this are shared, healthy communities that encourage authenticity and vulnerability, healthy communities where we can learn from one another, share, be encouraged and uplifted. Sometimes in men's groups, there's a lot of sarcasm and tearing down and joking, but it's very important for us to find ourselves in places where we are encouraged by men to do better, to become more, to learn more, to impact our world in meaningful ways, to go out and help those that have needs and are at risk. I think those types of men's communities would be really, really important. And something that we don't see even in our whole food plant-based space very often is men getting together and supporting each other. Women do a great job of that. Men, we don't tend to do that. So I would just encourage men to find a community. It can be 2 or 3 people to start doing that and get together and, bring something valuable to share that builds each other up, that we can become better together.
That's so beautiful. And of course, sometimes that can also be combined as sort of a twofer around sharing healthy food or around exercise, having a buddy to work out with or run with or walk with. Then you can have social connection and movement at the same time. So these things really can be combined in synergistic ways. Scott, I just so appreciate you, your visionary leadership, your wisdom, your scientific rigor, your heart, your love of helping people and spreading the truth. Your work is legendary. It's changing the world, and we're so grateful for your time and for your partnership in the food revolution.
Oh, thank you, Ocean. I am absolutely delighted to support all the amazing work you're doing. You and your father have touched millions of lives around the world, and it's just such an honor to be working with you. Thank you.
Thank you. When it comes to cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, and other chronic illness, what really matters isn't how many books you read, how many webinars you attend, or how much you know. What really matters at the end of the day is what you eat and how you live. The science has given us what we need to know. Now it's time for action. It's time to implement and optimize your healthy lifestyle. It's time to get results. It's time to say goodbye to confusion and hello to clarity. It's time to say goodbye to bad habits and hello to good ones. It's time to fall in love with foods that love you back. It's time to join a community that will support you in achieving your goals. It's time for Whole Life Club.